Welcome to the fourth module in this series designed to help enrich your Mandela Washington Fellowship experience in the US. During this 15-minute module, we will address mutual respect, diversity, the practice of inclusion, and provide you with some information for communication for leaders that can be applied during the fellowship. A list of resources will be provided at the end of this module. We will cover the following topics and answer the following questions. What is mutual respect, and why is it important to understand mutual respect as a leader and to have a successful fellowship? What are the benefits of diversity, and how do leaders think about diversity? Why is practicing inclusion important? And finally, we will cover several aspects of communications for leaders. This will include intercultural communication, collaborating across cultures, and conflict resolution. Mutual respect is defined as the responsibility of an individual to behave in a manner that treats people with dignity and respect, coupled with the right one has to receive the same treatment from others. As a leader and Mandela Washington Fellow, it is important that you understand mutual respect for your own professional benefit and be able to model the behavior for those around you. The Mandela Washington Fellowship promotes a climate of trust and mutual respect. We expect that each fellow respects the worth, dignity, potential, and uniqueness of each individual. We empower, support, and listen to each other and encourage teamwork to achieve our common goal. Fellows are expected to conduct themselves in a professional manner at all times during the program. Fellows should never use derogatory language, racial slurs, engage in name-calling, nor use language that could be deemed offensive. The Mandela Washington Fellowship and its institute partners are committed to providing equal opportunity and inclusion for all participants. All fellows are expected to uphold US and institute anti-discrimination and anti-harassment policies as explained in detail in the Fellow Handbook. As a leader, it is important that you are open to learning from other points of view and approaches. You are expected to be respectful of opposing viewpoints and be able to diplomatically and tactfully communicate with others who do not share your beliefs. All fellows should be respected regardless of their religion, race, disability, sexuality, or socioeconomic status. Please remember to use your fellowship handbook as a resource. You will find more information about expectations, respect, and behavior guidelines in Section 1 of the Fellowship Overview on pages 10 and 11, and in the Terms and Conditions in Sections 9 on page 2. Next, we will briefly discuss diversity, aspects of diversity, benefits of diversity, and diversity strategy. Diversity means more than just acknowledging or tolerating difference. Diversity is a set of practices that include practicing mutual respect for qualities and experiences that are different from our own. Understanding that diversity includes not only ways of being, but also ways of knowing. Recognizing that personal, cultural, and institutionalized discrimination creates privileges for some, while sustaining disadvantages for others. Building alliances across differences so that we can work together to eradicate all forms of discrimination and bias. The United States is an incredibly diverse country and includes individuals with a range of political and religious beliefs, physical abilities, sexual orientations, and gender identities. In the US, diversity is taken into consideration across a range of sectors and policies, including business, education, healthcare, and social rights. During your participation in the fellowship, you will meet and collaborate with a diverse and varied group of Americans, and also fellows from across the continent. The individuals you meet during your exchange may be physically different from you or hold beliefs that aren't aligned with those that you value. However, the fellowship acknowledges and embraces the differences and aspects of diversity. The fellowship also respects individual rights to self-identify, and we recognize that no one culture or way of thinking is intrinsically superior to another. Both as a leader and Mandela Washington Fellow, understanding the advantages of diversity will help you to establish a competitive edge. Research has shown that these advantages stem from including colleagues and peers with varying abilities, ideas, and life experiences. As you continue to learn to work with different ethnicities, faith backgrounds, and gender orientations, each fellow will learn to draw strength from being in a diverse and inclusive environment. Here we have a few examples of the benefits of diversity. Research shows that companies who have diversity strategies have a high return on investment by increased profits, increased positive media commentary and more recognition for provided services, greater innovation and creativity, greater range of perspectives, and are able to generate more high-quality solutions than less diverse groups, better employees who possess more technical and competitive skills. How do you begin the process of discussing diversity during your fellowship experience, at your place of work, in your peer groups, or in your community? The first step is to develop a diversity strategy. It is important for leaders at all stages of their careers to be able to draft a simple diversity plan like the one shown above. This simple diversity strategy is a way to start the conversation about diversity and inclusion. As shown in the example, good leaders should model appropriate behavior by leading by example. They should also welcome feedback from their colleagues, seek out experts, and share subject knowledge through trainings, and finally, acknowledge diversity in all its unique forms. Here's another example. I suggest that our volunteer group would benefit from recruiting individuals with disabilities. The organization would benefit from their alternate methods of mobility and communication. It would allow the organization to reach and service a larger portion of the community. The organization could hold a meeting to gather ideas from everyone and will implement trainings before onboarding the new volunteers. Diversity strategies don't need to be overly complicated. Did you notice that all the diversity strategy key points were covered in the example? The mission of the U.S. Department of State's Bureau of Educational and Cultural Affairs, or ECA, is to increase mutual understanding between the people of the United States and the people of other countries by means of educational and cultural exchange that assist in the development of peaceful relations. ECA has a long-standing commitment to diversity and inclusion across all the programs that fall under the Bureau's purview. Inclusion is the act of creating environments in which any individual or group is welcomed, respected, supported, valued, and allowed to fully participate. An inclusive and welcoming climate embraces differences and offers respect in words and actions for all people. Inclusion involves bringing together and recognizing the strength of diverse individuals and ideas in a way that is beneficial. Inclusion puts the concept and practice of diversity into action by creating an environment of involvement, respect, and connection, where the richness of ideas, backgrounds, and perspectives are harnessed to create added value. Fellows should practice inclusion at their institutes and during their interactions with members of their community. Equality is defined as treating everyone the same, regardless of their differences. Leaders understand the principles of inclusion and recognize that a person's differences, such as age, race, sex, sexual orientation, religion, national origin, or physical disability, can be also viewed as beneficial. These individuals are entitled to be held in the same esteem as any of their colleagues, as well as incorporated into regular business practices. Here we present some examples of how top companies in the United States have used inclusion to promote equality. Good leaders know that being attentive to both diversity needs and by practicing inclusion, their group, company, nonprofit, or office can experience measurable positive results. What is the leader's role in supporting diversity and inclusion? Here we have a few concrete recommendations from Harvard Business Review that can help you to support diversity and inclusion during your fellowship's experience and at home. Use scheduled unstructured time to get to know one another. Have conversations over lunch, in transit to sessions, traveling to site visits, or any time you may have to become more familiar with colleagues, peers, and co-workers. Model appropriate informal conversations about non-program matters. This simply means to have casual conversations that include appropriate leading questions. For example, How did you decide on your professional field? What is the most beautiful area of your country? If you could change one policy, what would it be? If you had unlimited funds to donate to any one cause, which one would you choose? Suggest to include diverse individuals in all activities. As a leader, be the first to suggest including someone who may have a different cultural background, difference of opinion, or physical disability. Remember, if you are not practicing inclusion, then you're demonstrating exclusion and bias. Pose questions that lead to discussing alternative viewpoints. For example, what's another way of doing this? Be mindful of bias. Bias is defined as prejudice in favor of or against one thing, person, or group compared with another, usually in a way considered to be unfair. We will discuss bias in greater detail and provide you with some examples of how it should be avoided in the next section of this module. As you get to know each other over the course of the Mandela Washington Fellowship, it helps to view each other as colleagues and not just representatives of your countries. Openly inviting differing opinions provides your colleagues permission to share different perspectives, which can help with problem solving and can foster an inclusive atmosphere where they will feel that their views are both respected and welcome. Leaders must learn to recognize bias and offer solutions to resolve complex and sometimes uncomfortable situations that can occur from cultural misunderstandings. Here we present you with some examples of bias. We can insert any of the aspects of diversity, and this would provide us with an example of bias. For example, I am better than you because I am older and I have more engineering experience. Or, this is the way it should be done because this is how we do it in my country. A goal of the Mandela Washington Fellowship is for you to learn to promote inclusive environments, support diversity, and recognize strength in differences while avoiding bias at all costs. A good quality in a leader is being able to recognize bias. Identifying bias in various forms of communication is the first step in being able to take steps to eliminate it from both social and professional environments. The second step is being comfortable asking questions and having conversations to counteract the demonstrated bias. Let's briefly go over using sensitive language. For example, biased. The autistic child worked with a teacher who taught all of the special children at the school. Correct. The child with autism worked with a teacher who taught all of the children with disabilities at the school. Biased. I surveyed older adults while collecting data. Correct. I surveyed participants between ages 70 and 84 while collecting data. We will now move on to the next section in this module, where we will discuss communication for leaders, including collaborating across cultures, intercultural communication, and conflict resolution. Communication is arguably the most important key to a leader's success. To grow as a leader, you must learn to be an effective, compelling communicator. Regardless of whether you're talking about business, politics, sports, or the military, the best leaders are first-rate communicators. Their values are clear and solid, and what they say promotes those values. A key part of having a successful fellowship and working effectively with others is about building awareness of ourselves and our own expectations. The majority of fellows placed at your institute represent cultures that you may not have experienced prior to your exchange in the US. We can also proactively learn about groups of people who might be different from us in order to broaden our understanding. Self-awareness. Reflect and think critically about your own cultural biases. Being aware of others. Be mindful that your assumptions or interpretation of a given culture might not be accurate or applicable in a given context. Bridging skills. Consciously seek out new cultural experiences, specifically cross-cultural interactions. While language skills may be an important part of intercultural communication, they are by no means the only requirement. Intercultural communication also requires an understanding that different cultures have different customs, standards, social norms, and even thought patterns. Here we have listed some of the leadership skills needed for effective intercultural communication. having some level of understanding of the host culture at various levels, being able to recognize different forms of communication and social cues, understanding that certain local behaviors may or may not be acceptable, typical, or familiar to you, being aware of your own possible preconceived opinions or cultural biases, being sensitive to communication that may lead to intercultural boundaries. Finally, you will have the opportunity to exercise these skills during the fellowship with your colleagues from across the continent and with Americans on your site visits, community service excursions, and networking events. Here are some examples of communication barriers that leaders should be able to both recognize and avoid by using effective communication skills. Physical. You see two colleagues having a discussion and both are facing each other with their arms folded while having a difficult conversation. Cultural. You notice that a member of your team won't interact with their colleague who identifies as transgender. Perceptual. You notice that a colleague of yours is always happy and in a good mood. You automatically assume that they love their job and they're a great team member, when the complete opposite could be true. You decide not to include him in the improvement survey. Motivational. When speaking to a colleague, you notice that you have to repeat yourself. You also have to constantly recheck their work. Experiential. You have two colleagues who come from very culturally different parts of the country, and their continual referring to how things are done in their respective communities is negatively affecting morale and output. Once a leader has developed a core set of communication skills and understanding, they can begin to apply them to all professional and personal settings. Most people would agree that communication between two individuals should be simple. It is important to remember that there are differences between talking and communicating. When you communicate, you're successful in getting your point across to the person you're talking to. When we talk, we want to remember not to erect barriers that hinder our ability to communicate. Being a good and effective leader means sometimes having to use your professional skills to solve complex interpersonal problems, have difficult conversations, and resolve conflict. Next, we will discuss conflict resolution and provide you with some steps for addressing difficult situations. Conflict is any situation in which your concerns or desires differ from those of another person. Throughout your experience on the Mandela Washington Fellowship, you may come into conflict with one or more individuals. Here are some reasons that conflict arises between colleagues, peers, or members of an organization. Have different points of view. Communicate to one another differently. Spend large amounts of time together. Depend on one another to get the job done. Established expectations of one another are not communicated and then not met. Conflict does not always have to be negative. When colleagues are able to challenge one another's ideas in a supportive environment, new ideas are generated and fostered. It is important to remember that conflict will always exist between colleagues. Remember, effective leaders have the skills to manage the conflict process and turn disagreements into ideas and training moments. It is important to note that there is no one way to resolve a conflict, and leaders will often need to utilize multiple methods in order to reach a resolution. Here's a brief explanation of the 5 basic methods for resolving conflict. Avoiding. Way of handling conflict by making an active decision to not handle the conflict. Collaborating. Handling the conflict through team input. Competing. Handling the conflict through unilateral decision-making. Accommodating. Handling conflict by making an active decision to not handle the conflict. Compromising. Handling the conflict by reaching a resolution that involves a win on both sides. Based on the nature of the conflict and situation, a good leader will be able to apply the steps to resolving conflict. For example, you could do the following. Set up a meeting between the conflicting parties to discuss the issue. Let them know that you are there to work together to find a solution, and that they need to focus on the problem, not the person. Ask them to listen carefully to one another's point of view and to use active listening skills so that everyone feels heard. Be clear about the facts and then work together to agree on a resolution. Get practice by focusing on a relatively mild conflict first, and then try it on a more significant one. During your institute, please remember to use institute staff as a resource for resolving conflicts, navigating complex situations, as well as to assist you in working through difficult conversations. Here we have an example of a conflict that may arise during the fellowship at your institute. Use the steps to resolving conflict and conflict resolution methods to address the conflict in this scenario. There is not a single correct answer, and we encourage you to come up with multiple solutions. Scenario: your institute's academic director selects you to be the leader of a group presentation to be presented at your institute's closing ceremony. After working with the other group members to assign roles and responsibilities, you notice that one of your team members, Joseph, has not been completing his tasks on time and often does not have updates to provide during team meetings. Other team members begin to grow frustrated that he has not been fulfilling his responsibilities and voice their concern to you privately. As the leader, you are worried that the presentation will not be successful due to Joseph's actions and the frustration amongst the group. Question: as a leader, how would you address and resolve this situation? It is important to remember that practicing mutual respect of one another, recognizing diversity, practicing inclusion, and learning to communicate effectively across cultures is an opportunity to gain understanding, increase acceptance, and add value to your fellowship experience. Finally, let's briefly cover the assignments that we need you to complete before moving forward to the next module. Next steps. Number 1. We encourage you to think about how you could use diversity or practice inclusion in your current role. Before beginning your institute, practice intercultural communications with friends, colleagues, or co-workers. Number 2. Complete the conflict resolution exercise. You are not required to submit this exercise as it is only for practice. Number 3. Complete the Module 4 quiz once you've completed this webinar. We also want to point out some available resources that provide more background about the Mandela Washington Fellowship, the evidence around the benefits of diversity, and communication for leaders. Thank you again for joining us for this module. We hope you find this information useful and encourage you to reach out with any questions.